What's up everybody, we're back with a new video, and in today's episode we're going to do a breakdown of 31 tracks by Tupac that were listed on the handwritten Euthanasia drafts. And those tracks are still unreleased, have not been leaked, and some of them have not even been recorded at all. And they were just concepts that Tupac had in mind when he was working on the drafts for the Euthanasia album. So in this video I will do a breakdown of all those unleaked or unrecorded tracks based on the information I could find on the handwritten tracklist drafts for Euthanasia. And I will cover the track titles, also the producers and the featured artists that were mentioned on those drafts. So this video will give an idea of tracks that might still be left in the vault and hopefully will leak one day in the future. And as mentioned in the previous video, Tupac had the concept for the Euthanasia album in mind for some time already, even before it was signed to Death Row. So there are a couple of tracklist drafts out there. Over 30 I have analyzed for this video and also for the previous video. So some of the drafts are older and were written before Tupac was signed to Death Row. And also some of the drafts were written after Tupac was signed to Death Row. And when he was working on his album on Death Row, he first had the album title Euthanasia in mind, but that evolved into All Eyez On Me, as Suge Knight also confirmed in an interview, and he said that he was the one that came up with the title All Eyez On Me. And I want to give you a quick update because, as mentioned in the previous video, all the videos that are posted on this channel are created according YouTube's community guidelines, and I'm working on a solution to share the full and uncut versions of the videos on this channel, including all the music and all the footage that I cannot show you on YouTube. And besides the uncut videos, you will also get access to all the music archives, including the full tracks in the best quality available, various mixdown and remixes, also get access to some rare tracks that you can't find anywhere on YouTube. So stay tuned for more information about that coming soon, and if you're not interested in that, no problem at all. Just make sure to subscribe to the channel if you can appreciate these videos. So let's get started with this video. Make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any additions or info to this video, make sure to share your thoughts in the comment section. And also thanks to everybody who contributed to the previous videos. It's highly appreciated. And with that being said, now let's jump straight over to the first track that we'll cover in this video. And the first track title is A Scared Man Can't Win, and it appears on various Euthanasia tracklist drafts. And on some of the drafts the title is mentioned only as Scared Man. And on some of the drafts you can also see that Tupac had some featurings in mind for this track. On one of the drafts it shows that Scarface would be featured on it. And there's also another draft that shows that Scarface would be featured on the song together with Corrupt from the Dog Pound. Then we have another draft that shows that Cool G Rap and Tretch would be on the song. And some of the drafts also provide information about the producers that Tupac had in mind for the song. On two of the drafts, Mike Mosley is listed as the producer. And there are also two drafts that shows that Eric Sermon would be the producer. And then there's also another draft on which none other than Dr. Dre is listed as the producer. That's also the same draft where Scarface and Corrupt are listed as the featured artist. Now that would be a dope combination, and we all know what Tupac can do with a Dr. Dre beat, so that would definitely be a dope track. And besides that, there's also another draft that shows that Johnny J is listed as the producer of the beat. And it's unclear whether these were just ideas that Tupac had or whether a track was actually recorded for A Scared Man Can't Win, but since it was included in several drafts, you can conclude that he definitely had some serious intentions on recording this track. So now let's go over to the next track that was listed on several Euthanasia drafts, and that is Making Moves. One of the drafts shows that Tupac had the idea to record the song together with E40 and Richie Rich. That would be a dope combination. And on the other drafts, no other features are mentioned, so based on that it would be a Tupac solo track. And you can see that Tupac mentioned several producers on the handwritten tracklist drafts, and those are Shanti, Mosey, and on one of the drafts, Mosey is listed together with Tupac himself as the producer. And there's also another draft on which Rhythm D is mentioned as the producer. And there's another draft on which Mike Mosley is listed as the producer of the track. And you can also see that there's one draft showing that Making Moves is indicated as the intro to the album that Tupac had in mind when he was working on the draft. And on one of the drafts where Mosey is listed as the producer, it also shows that Tupac made a note which says, contains a sample of Running Away, which is a song by Sly and the Family Stone. So I'm curious to know if Tupac actually recorded this track and if it will be leaked or released in the future. Now on to the next unreleased or unrecorded track that was mentioned on several Euthanasia tracklist drafts, and that is You Know It's the Ballad of the Dead Soldier. You Know It's the Ballad of the Caged Bird. Yeah, you heard it right. The track title is Ballad of the Caged Bird. And two drafts shows that Digital Planets is listed as the producer of the track. None of the drafts shows any featured artist would appear on the song, so based on that it would be a Tupac solo track. And every time I see this title, it reminds me of the Tupac track that we all know, which is the Ballad of the Dead Soldier. And I actually don't think that the titles have anything to do with each other, but just imagine that Tupac would say Cage Bird instead of Dead Soldier on that record. Now that would be fly as hell. Now that's enough of the BS before it gets out of control. And that's also the title of the next track that is mentioned on several Euthanasia tracklist drafts. And there's not much info that I could find about Out of Control. No other artists were mentioned as featured artists on the record, so based on that it would be a Tupac solo track. And on one of the drafts you can see that Warren G is mentioned as the producer of the beat. And now on to the next track, which is titled In the Morning, and as you can see it is mentioned on various tracklist drafts. Most of those drafts shows that R. Kelly would be featured on the track and that he also produced the beat. On one of those drafts it also states that Tupac had the song in mind to release it as a single. And there are also several drafts showing that the R&B group Jodeci would appear on the song instead of R. Kelly. And those drafts shows that Devante would be the producer of the song. So I'm curious if the song was actually recorded, and my gut feeling says there's a high probability that it actually has been recorded because it is mentioned on so many of the tracklist drafts. Another title that has appeared on many Euthanasia drafts is If You Want Me to Stay, and none of the drafts shows that other artists besides Tupac would appear on the song, so based on that it's probably a solo track. Many of the drafts also shows that Shock G from Digital Underground is the producer of the beat, and as you know, Shock G was a member of the group Digital Underground and is also the one that produced I Get Around, which is considered by many as one of Tupac's breakthrough tracks. And now on to the next track, which is titled Explicit Lyrics, which is mentioned on various Euthanasia drafts, and on one of those drafts it states that the song was written to Incarcerated Scarfaces, and Incarcerated Scarfaces is a song by Raekwon from the Wu-Tang Clan, and it appeared on his album Only Built for Cuban Links, and it was released in 1995. You can also see that on one of the Euthanasia drafts that Dr. Dre and Dez are listed as the producers of the beat, and on another draft you can see that Mike Mosley is listed as the producer. And now imagine if this track was actually recorded and Dr. Dre and Dez would be the producers of the beat, then it would most definitely be a straight banger. The next track that is also mentioned on many different Euthanasia drafts is titled 5 Levels of the Game, and you can see that on one of the drafts the title is written down as 4 Levels of the Game. And there are several featurings and producers that are listed on the drafts. The draft on which the title has been changed to 4 Levels of the Game lists Freddie Fox, Cam and Tretch as the featured artist and Eric Sermon as the producer. Then there are several drafts where 187 is listed as the producer, and it shows that 187, Sibo, Freddie Fox and E40 would be featured on the song. There are 2 drafts that indicate that Felony, 187, Sibo and Big Melky would be on the song, and Felony was a previous name for Gaddafi and Big Melky was a name used by Idi Amin, who both later became members of the Outlaws. Other drafts shows that Dramacidal and Felony are featured on the song and that the beat was produced by Rhythm D. And Fatal and Felony was the name of the rap group that consists of the rappers Fatal and Gaddafi, who were later also members of the Outlaws. And Dramacidal was a group consisting of the rappers Idi Amin, Castro and Gaddafi, who used other names before becoming part of the Outlaws. And in that group, Idi was known as Big Melky or Big Malcolm, Yaki Gaddafi was known as Young Hollywood, and Castro was known as K-Dog. And now let's jump over to the next track, which is titled No Witnesses, and one of the drafts states that Reza from the Wu-Tang Clan would be the producer, or KG. Another tracklist draft only lists Reza as the producer, and there's also a tracklist draft showing that Rhythm D is listed as the producer. On 3 of the drafts, no other featurings are mentioned, and there's another draft on which Method Man and Tretch are listed as the featured artist. There's also another draft that shows that Tretch and Corrupt from the Dog Pound would be featured on the song. And besides that, there's also another tracklist draft that shows that in addition to Method Man, Freddie Fox is also featured on the track. And the next track that we're going to cover in this video is titled Small Thanks to a Giant, and on some of the drafts the title is only mentioned as Small Thanks, and this track is listed on many different tracklist drafts as well. And it also shows that Tupac had different concepts in mind for the song. And as you can see, there are several producers mentioned on these drafts, including Organized Noise, Soul Shock, The Goody Mob, and also Above the Law. And there are 4 drafts that shows that Outkast would be featured on the song. And on 2 of the drafts you can also see that CeeLo from The Goody Mob would also be on the song. Another draft indicates that only the Goody Mob would appear on the record and that Goody Mob also would be the producer of the beat. So I'm really curious if Tupac actually recorded vocals for the song or if it was just a concept that he had in mind. Alright, next track on our list is Hard to Kill, and it is mentioned on a couple of Euthanasia drafts. 3 of the drafts shows that Above the Law would be featured on the record, and all of these drafts shows that the beat would be produced by 187. And Tupac teaming up with Above the Law on the same track is a formula for a straight classic, so I really hope that the song is actually recorded and that it will be leaked or released in the future. And that brings us to the next track, which is Ride On 'Em featuring the Outlaws. And there are 6 drafts on which this title is mentioned, and all the drafts shows that the Outlaw Immortals would be featured on it. On most of the Euthanasia drafts, Ride On 'Em is listed as the second track of the album, and it could be that Ride On 'Em was an earlier title for the song When We Ride that was also released on the All Eyez On Me album, but I'm not 100% sure about that. Of course, it could also be that this title was a completely different track, and if you have more information about this, make sure to share your thoughts in the comments. And the next track on our list is titled No Matter What. There's not really much info that I can give about this track because it is only mentioned on 2 of the Euthanasia drafts. There are no featured artists mentioned and also no producers that are mentioned on the drafts. So on to the next track, and that is titled Soldiers, and the title is mentioned on 2 Euthanasia tracklist drafts. On one of those drafts it is track number 13, and it also shows that Scarface, Tretch and Sister Soldier would be featured on the song. And on the other draft it is the 6th track, and it shows that only Scarface and Tretch would be featured on the song. And Tupac and Scarface together on a track would be a dope combination anyway, so I'm curious if this song was actually recorded or if it was just a concept that Tupac had in mind. The next track is titled Soldier's Team, and it is only mentioned on one of the Euthanasia drafts. And on this draft it is number 13 of the album, and no further information is known about it. There are no featured artists listed and there's no producer mentioned on the draft. Blackfire is the title of the next track that we'll cover in this video, and this title is also mentioned on only one of the Euthanasia drafts. And on this draft it's the 8th track on the album, and you can see that Freddie Fox would be featured on the song, and according to the draft, Rhythm D would be the producer of the beat. The title of the next track is The Cross, and you can see that it is the 4th track on the album tracklist draft. And you can also see on the draft that Freddie Fox would also appear on this song. No producer was listed on the draft. On to the next track, and the title of that is Don't Know Me. And you can see that it is only mentioned on one of the Euthanasia tracklist drafts. And on this draft it is the 4th song on the album. No featured artist is mentioned, and also no producer is mentioned on the tracklist draft. And that brings us to the next track on our list, which is Thug Love, and you can see that this would be the 14th song on the album. This is also listed on only one of the Euthanasia drafts, and also rappers E40 and Richie Rich are listed as the featured artists. And if this song was actually recorded, it would definitely be a dope collaboration. And also notable is that Tupac later also recorded the original version of Thug Love together with Bizzy Bone and Silky Fine. Later Silky Fine was dropped from the track, and the other members of Bone Thugs and Harmony were added to it. And this track was also a classic in my opinion. The various Euthanasia drafts also contain titles of intros, outros and interludes that are unreleased or may not even have been recorded. And one of these is the intro with the title The War Syndrome that is mentioned on one of the drafts. And you can see that the DOC would also be featured on it. Now imagine that Tupac and DOC would be on the same track. That would be hella tight. And this tracklist draft also shows that K-Ree is listed as the producer of the beat. Another intro mentioned on several Euthanasia tracklist drafts is Did You Get 'Em? And on some of the drafts the title is spelled as Did You Get Him? 2 of the drafts also state that Tupac himself is the producer of this intro. And since this title is listed on 8 drafts, it seems very likely to me that Tupac actually recorded something for this. So who knows, we might get to hear this intro one day. Now on to the next intro, and this one is titled The Secrets of War. And it's mentioned on 2 of the Euthanasia drafts. And on one of those drafts it shows that Johnny J is listed as the producer. And the other draft lists Shanti as the producer. And Tupac has also released 2 versions of the track Secrets of War, which was previously discussed in an earlier video. And these are not intros but full tracks with multiple verses from Tupac and the Outlaws. And on one of those versions, Corrupt from the Dog Pound was also featured on it. Next up is an interlude with the title One Day, which is mentioned on 2 of the Euthanasia drafts. On one of the drafts it's listed as the 11th track on the album, and on the other draft it's listed as the 12th track on the album. And both drafts shows that Tupac himself is listed as the producer. Next up is Where Do We Go From Here, and it's the title of an interlude, and also it's used as a title of an outro, and it is mentioned on 3 of the Euthanasia tracklist drafts, and on 2 of them it's listed as an interlude, and on 1 of those drafts it is listed as an outro, and none of the drafts indicate who the producer is. And then we also have a couple of outros that were mentioned on the Euthanasia drafts. One of them is titled Gotta Give It Up, and on 5 of the Euthanasia drafts this outro is mentioned, and on 3 of the drafts it's the 15th track on the album, and on 2 of the drafts it's the 16th track of the album. And one of the drafts also states that Tupac himself is the producer of this outro. Then there's also an outro that's mentioned on 2 of the Euthanasia drafts with the title Supreme Euthanasia, and on both handwritten tracklist drafts it's the 15th track on the album. And you can also see that Shock G from Digital Underground is listed as the producer on both of those drafts. And next up is another ballad. It's not the ballad of a dead soldier. It's also not the ballad of a caged bird as mentioned earlier in this video. But this is the next outro, and it's mentioned as the Ballad of Euthanasia. It is listed on 7 of the Euthanasia tracklist drafts. And 6 drafts shows that Shock G is the producer, and one of the drafts also shows that this outro contains a sample of the track What's Up With The Love by Digital Underground, and since this outro has been mentioned on many drafts, I think there's a good chance that it has actually been recorded. The next outro mentioned on one of the Euthanasia drafts is titled Someday Soon. There's not really much to say about this. You can see that Herman Ferguson is mentioned as the featured artist on this outro, and that it is listed as the 14th track on the tracklist draft. The title of the next outro is Only Time Can Tell, and you can see it's mentioned on one of the Euthanasia tracklist drafts, and it also shows that Herman Ferguson is also featured on this outro, and that it's the 15th track on the album. And then there are 2 unleaked tracks that are not mentioned on the Euthanasia tracklist drafts, but I saw they were mentioned on Wikipedia and mentioned as leftover and extra tracks for the All Eyez On Me album. The source is Wikipedia, so I don't know how reliable this information is, but since Euthanasia evolved into All Eyez On Me, I decided to add it to this video. And the first title is Are You Still Smiling For Me? There are no featured artists listed, and I have not been able to find any further information about this. It could be that this refers to the track Smile by Tupac featuring Scarface that was produced by Johnny J, but I'm not sure about that, so if you have any information about this track, make sure to share it in the comments. And a funny story to quickly share about the recording sessions of the track Smile featuring Scarface is that in an interview Scarface said that when he was in the studio with Tupac to record Smile, Tupac had done his verse, and then it turned out that the engineer had forgotten to turn on the microphone, and so it was not recorded. And according to Scarface, Tupac then took off his headphones and he started yelling at the engineer, to which the engineer was like, "My bad," and Tupac then replied, "You don't have many my bads left." And this also shows that Tupac was really passionate about his recording sessions and when he was working in the studio. And now let's jump over to the last title that we will cover in today's video, and that is The Thugs, which is also mentioned on Wikipedia as a leftover and extra track for the All Eyez On Me album. And I also think it's a strange title with the colon, but for the sake of completeness, I have added it to this video. Now I couldn't find any further information about this track, so there's not much to say about it. So if you have any information about this, make sure to share it in the comment section. And my question to you is, let's say all of those tracks that were covered in today's videos were actually recorded, and if you could pick 3 tracks to be released, which ones would it be? And if for a track there are several featurings and producers mentioned, make sure to also let it be known in the comments which combination would be your pick of choice. I hope you enjoyed this video. I thought it was very cool to see what ideas Tupac had for the tracks and the whole concept surrounding Euthanasia, and how all of these drafts ultimately evolved into the end result of the classic album All Eyez On Me, which remains an iconic album until this day. So I hope you found this video interesting and that you gained some new information from it. And if you like these videos and want to support the channel, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and also hit the thumbs up for this video. Keep an eye out on the channel because I will be back with a lot of more content coming soon. So thanks for watching, and until the next video.